Hi, my name is Becky Jennings, and this is the Response Able Parenting Podcast. I give you the transformational tools to stop reacting to your children in the moment and start responding with intention.
Do you find yourself locked in a daily power struggle with your child? Do you fall back into old patterns like yelling or threatening just to stop the annoying behavior? Are you desperate to learn how to connect with your kids, set boundaries, heck, gain some cooperation? If this is you, you need to check out my community. Inside my community, you'll have access to my signature Strong-Willed Language course, where you learn how to regulate yourself, understand and speak your strong-willed kids' language to virtually eliminate the constant power struggles. You'll have access to my workshop library, giving you step-by-step strategies for sibling rivalry, listening, anger and aggression, emotional regulation, and more. You'll have weekly Q&A opportunities to get personalized answers on challenging situations. You'll get specific strategies for you based on exactly what's going on in your home. No umbrella strategy, no umbrella script, no box. You'll get a personalized roadmap to support you. Plus, you'll get dozens of bite-sized lessons to regroup, stay on track, and stay motivated. It is time to stop walking on eggshells around your children and finally experience the relief you are looking for. Join the community today, and let's get started.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Responsible Parenting. My name is Becky Jennings. I'm your host. And today I really wanted to spend some time reflecting on the disaster that is the Southern California fires, the Los Angeles fires, the Palisades fires, the Eaton fires, the 20 other fires that caught over the past week. And I just really wanted to spend some time discussing really what that does to the body, what I noticed in my body. And, right now, as we head into 2025, I feel like there's a lot going on. Many of us already feel a tremendous amount of stress and pressure to parent differently than we were raised. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot more education. There's just so much more on a parent's plate today. That already adds like a baseline layer of stress that is much larger than any generation that has experienced that stress. We now have social media stresses that's never existed for children. We now have climate disasters that truly really haven't been at this level, and we have those with our children. We also are experiencing the fears around school safety, and that really wasn't a thing for parents. We now are dealing with the awareness and the knowledge of chemicals and dyes in our food that are affecting our children's brain health and brain development. Now that's on our radar. What I'm trying to say is there is just so much more on our plates to think about, to worry about, and to then feel guilty if we're not, quote unquote, managing it perfectly. We're not doing it perfectly. We're not sheltering our children from all of this stuff. And that really came into stark focus for me when we were evacuating Los Angeles. Last Tuesday, the fires were just beginning. They were just starting to pick up. They were baby fires. They're babies. And in Southern California, on the West Coast, we're very used to wildfires. But this was different. This was different because we also had the Santa Ana winds, and I'm sure you've heard the news coverage, but essentially what happened is the Santa Ana winds came in, took over, and created almost like this impossible fire to fight, because it wasn't just a wildfire, it was an urban hurricane fire. So we have hurricane category 2 winds ripping through Los Angeles, filled with fire, filled with embers, filled with flames, filled with all of this. So sparks are flying miles and miles and miles. And on top of that, we had humans taking advantage of the chaos and starting additional fires. So the level of safety was not contained to areas outside the fire. It was there's no other way to describe it than a hellscape of unknown, of where the next person is going to start the next fire, where the next ember is going to drop. And I was on an air quality Zoom for about 2.5 hours yesterday, and they basically said Los Angeles is a war zone. It is what you would walk in to an actual war zone. That's what we're seeing in our city. The size and scale of this destruction is it's almost impossible to wrap your brain around. Essentially, the entire size of San Francisco has burned to the ground. And that's my city. That's my home. And so it is really, really strange. Because outside, there's no wind. Outside, the sky is blue. Outside, the birds are chirping. Outside, everyone's walking around, and we're all kind of just zombies walking in this unknown. And there is nothing political about the wildfires. There is nothing to even be said about this in politics. This is humanity, and I want to talk about what is happening inside of our body. So when we feel an exorbitant amount of stress, and I want to touch back on what we already are existing, how we already exist as parents, that baseline level of stress that I had mentioned at the top of this podcast, those are all piled up, right? We have all of those stressors kind of ruminating in our bodies on a regular basis. Like that's our daily. Then you add something catastrophic. You add something completely unknown. You add something completely out of the blue, a hurricane, a flood, a tornado, a hurricane fire, whatever it is, you add that on top of this. And our stress levels go kind of through the roof and beyond. And our body does not know how to deal with this because at that point, your body which is already primed to look for threats. Our nervous system is already at its peak performance of generations and centuries of development of being able to focus on scanning everything around you and always looking for a threat. This is that negative confirmation bias where we were always looking for ways to protect ourselves and our families. And so when we go out of that window of stress and we can't even fathom the next level of stress, something happens in our body. And I was calling it low power mode. I was like, it's weird. I'm walking around, I'm doing things, I'm functioning, but it was this sluggish, like inability to focus on anything new. And I was actually at the time reading this book, Rewire, and it's all about how we have the power to change our brain and all of this stuff. And it was fascinating because I literally was talking to my friend who also evacuated and was in the cabin with us. And I was saying to her, I just feel like I'm in low power mode. Like I just feel like I'm unable to focus. I'm sluggish. I'm losing track of like what I'm doing. I'm stopping something in the middle of, and I'm starting something. And I'm like, wait, why did I come in this room? And it's amazing because a week later, I'm reading this book, Rewire, and it talks about how when our body hits this level of stress and when we are in chronic stress and when we are just overwhelmed in the sensorial space that we live in and we're just bombarded with external stress, our bodies do not know what to do. They shift into low power mode. And it was amazing. I felt so like, oh, that's what's happening because this woman was saying, yes, you go into low power mode. And when we are in low power mode, our brains will go back to the wiring that has already been established, and they will just do things that are automatic. So why do I talk about this? Because when we are stressed, we go to coping strategies, whether or not they are healthy, whether or not they are safe, whether or not they are aligned with our goals. We go to these default coping strategies because our bodies are preserving energy. And when our bodies are preserving energy, they are not willing to give that energy to the actual big amount of energy that is required and needed to create a new neural pathway, to create change, to create different habits. So when you are constantly stressed, whether that's work stress, relationship stress, whether or not there's a stress happening at your school, or there's a stress happening in your community, or you're stressed about the state of the world, or you're stressed about God knows what, because there are a million things we could be stressed about, that is a moment that we need to say, whoa, how can I take care of my stress? Because if I don't take care of the stress that is happening to my body, I will continue to operate in low power mode, which means I will be continuing to default to my old coping strategies, my old patterns, the old way of thinking, my ruminating thoughts. I'm going to stay locked in this. And the more I stay locked in this, the deeper that neural pathway becomes. And again, that solidifies that as our go-to strategy. It's fascinating. The amount of energy, the amount of power it takes from our bodies in order to rewire, in order to change a neural pathway, in order to shift in our mind from a not so healthy default way of dealing with stress to a new way of dealing with stress takes a tremendous amount of energy. And if we are constantly bombarded with external stress, our body's in low power mode, so it can't devote the energy and attention necessary to make the changes that make us feel good, to make the changes that we want to be a better parent, to make the changes that we know deep in our core would change our dynamics. But our brain is in preservation mode. It's giving and directing energy to our lungs, to our vital organs. It's not willing to let go of that because it is actually designed to keep us safe. So we're working against ourselves on a regular basis. It's fascinating. And so when I share regulation strategies, it's not just this woo-woo thing of like, I don't know, tap your shoulders a couple times or take a deep breath and exhale longer. That is simply because what we are doing every single time we give ourselves a regulation strategy and we utilize it, and we don't just say, that's not for me, but we use it. We are freeing up space in our brain. We are giving our battery a little bit more so that we can actually start to make those micro shifts in the direction that we choose, right? We are freeing up brain space. We're actually like wiping clean some of these areas that are under constant and chronic stress so we can devote more of that space to change. It's fascinating how this all works. And so if you notice that you're in this sluggish state when chaos is happening all around you, it makes sense. And that's not the time to say, I just need to grin and bear it. I just need to push through. If I push through this, I can get to the other side and then I'll feel better. No. That low power mode is telling you something. It is like a siren saying, I'm unable to actually cope with this amount of stress. That's why it feels so weird to like disassociate when you're like, it's weird. I can watch the fires from my backyard happening, and at the same time, I can go inside and make my kid a snack. How is my body able to do that? It's because we're in low power mode. It's because our brain and body is literally taking care of ourselves because the external stress would be too much for us to physically bear. It's wildly amazing. I continue to be so impressed with the function of our bodies, how smart and fine-tuned it is to protect, to take care, to literally help us survive these really intense moments. Now, our body wasn't designed to experience this level of stress on a regular basis. It's meant to oscillate through stress, right? It's meant to feel high stress and then move back down. You've heard the sympathetic probably and the parasympathetic. The sympathetic is when you have that mobilized energy, when you need to act fast, when you have adrenaline and you have those activation hormones racing through your body. That's the sympathetic. But then we're supposed to, after the event, drop back down into the parasympathetic. That's the rest and digest. And our body is meant to move through this. But that's not happening for us as parents in this generation, not at all. We're getting hit with so much stress on a regular basis that our bodies aren't able to drop back into that parasympathetic. We're not able to drop in to the rest and digest. So we are just in constant hypervigilant, constant mobilized energy. We are in constant ready to act. And that is not a safe place to parent from.
I want to share my free guide to managing our kids' meltdowns. We know that meltdowns are normal, but they still suck and can be ridiculously triggering. This 4-step free guide will help you break the cycle of reactivity and help you get through the meltdown without snapping yourself. Don't join your kid in the tantrum. Grab my free guide and learn how to manage meltdowns like a pro. Head to responsablepparenting.ck.page/meltdown, or just go and click the link in my show notes and get your guide today.
So as we're dealing with external stress, it is our job. It has been more clear to me than ever as we head into 2025 that the amount we are going to learn over the next year, the amount we are going to be bombarded with, whether or not you agree with whatever is happening in the world, it doesn't matter because the stress will reach you, period. It doesn't matter because something externally is there. It's just, now that's our reality. And so it is more important than ever to know systems and strategies that help you regulate your body, especially if you are hoping to make active change in your relationships, if you are hoping to break cycles, if you are determined to feel better and repair relationships, then it is vital. It is the critical step to learn self-regulation. It's critical. Self-regulation is going to be what allows your body to go from baseline panic attack on a regular basis, feeling completely dysregulated on a hair wire trigger that can go off at any time. This is going to help you slow down, maybe even a millimeter, maybe even an inch, right? We're taking these tiny steps that help us increase what we call our window of tolerance, our ability to withstand discomfort. When we are able to widen that gap, we are able to make the changes internally that we so desire to make. Because the amount of energy and effort it takes in our bodies to rewire our brains is substantial. It is substantial. And if we're operating in low power mode all the time, it's never going to change. So you actually have to take steps to calm, to regulate, to slow, to learn how to cleanse that brain, to learn how to activate your vagus nerve in a way that drops you back into the parasympathetic, that gives you that opportunity, that little space to breathe so that you can move. Sometimes we say we feel paralyzed, we feel stuck, we don't know the next right thing to do. We're looking at the scene in front of us and we're like, I don't even know how to respond. And that's because you're in low power mode. And when we are able to say, oh, this isn't an attack on me. This isn't proof that I'm a terrible parent. This isn't me failing. This isn't more evidence for me to use against myself as I'm going to bed so I feel much more guilty today. No, this is an opportunity to say, holy cow, my body is quite literally trying to protect me. And so it shut me down. It put me in low power mode. And all parenting from low power mode is reactive, unless your actual default pattern was calm, was responsive. If it wasn't, then you're going to always respond and react from your previous pattern that your brain and body already knows. Because our bodies would rather stay in a familiar hell than move to an unfamiliar heaven, because the unfamiliar brings fear, and fear keeps us small, keeps us away. So my hope in sharing all of this is to kind of peel back the curtain as to what is going on when we're feeling all of this chaos. Our body's in low power mode. Your body's in low power mode. It's literally shutting down and just focusing on keeping you alive. So don't expect yourself to make monumental shifts and changes. Don't expect yourself to move mountains. Don't expect yourself to be able to produce during this time. What you should be doing is finding the things that nourish you, that bring you joy, that bring you peace, that bring you calm. Maybe it's simply a hot shower, and that gives you that millimeter. Maybe it's lying on your back in your bed, tapping side to side, just saying, I am safe. I am safe. Maybe it's going through that 5 senses exercise that I shared in a previous podcast, which I'll link below. And going through those 5 senses, finding your place of safety and allowing your vagus nerve to slow down, allowing you to get back into that parasympathetic. The more we can attune to our body's low power mode signals, the more we will be able to shift and adjust in the moment to say, no. I'm not going to actually say what I want to say in this mode, because I know that's like my low power mode talking. That's not my hopes. That's not my commitment talking. That's my low power mode. I'm going to actually honor that low power mode. I'm going to tell my kids, mommy's battery actually just went into preservation mode. I got to go do 5 deep breaths. Then I can come back, because I can't do it right now. And I think if we're able to honor those moments, so much of what we want to achieve as parents will be possible. Instead of forcing it and jamming it and guilting ourselves into this, it's honoring the shifts and the micro changes that we want in our body, and not expecting immediate change, but understanding that the world around us has changed so dramatically that we need to honor the different pace. We need to honor the different pace, and we need to honor how our body is responding to the new pace. That is one of my massive takeaways from the existential dread that is happening in Los Angeles right now. I hope that served you well. I hope that was just like a, wow, thank you for sharing that, because when I kind of pieced all this together, it was just like, that has been everything I've been working on, and it makes sense. So thank you for being here. Thank you for all of the incredible messages. I can't say how much that touched me, from so many different political parties, people saying like, I voted differently than you do, but I still so much care about what you're doing. Just showed such a tremendous amount of humanity. And it proved once again that we are so much better together than we are apart. And there is so much more in common. We truly do have so much more in common than we have what divides us. So thank you for being here. Do something that nourishes your heart, that slows you down a bit today, that makes you smile, not just from your mouth, but from your heart. And please, please spend time with the people who nourish you, who make you feel good, who make you feel safe today. I will see you next week.
Thank you for listening to the Responsible Parenting Podcast. If you like what you heard, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. If you know someone who would benefit from this podcast, I'd be honored if you'd share this episode with them. Until next time, know that you are enough, you are capable, you've made it through all of your hardest days, and we will keep growing on this parenting journey together. This podcast was produced by Kim Kelty and myself, Becky Jennings, and edited by the Kelty Method, Branding and Podcasting.